Hello everyone and welcome to this oil painting time-lapse and chat of this painting behind me entitled Lord Fruity. I do hope you enjoy it and thank you so much for your amazing comments on my last video. If you are new here, I am going to do a little chat and update and then I will do the oil painting time-lapse. And I do have a little update this week, and that is last week when I uploaded my video I didn't receive any comments initially, and so I actually thought that I'd been banned from YouTube. I thought it's finally happened. But funnily enough, what actually happened was all my comments, for some strange reason, were being held for review. So I actually discovered that, and so I was like, yeah, I haven't been banned. But then I did actually have a troll comment who was like, it was on some old video and they were just like, your drawing is rubbish or something. So I was kind of like, yeah, oh. But anyway, I'm just super glad that that was the reason, because it was only a painting of like a magical looking cat, so it's like, I don't think it was offensive enough to be banned or anything like that. So anyway, I'm just super happy that I wasn't banned. And secondly, I thought I would talk a little bit about the story behind this painting. It's quite tiny once again, and I think it's about 8 by 10, and I'm doing it landscape this week. Last week it was portrait. And I think that this painting was actually based on a place rather than an idea of an animal or a like person or a character. And the place is, there used to be this house near where I live, and it was very mysterious looking, much like the type of house that you would read about in a kind of mystery, possibly even, I wouldn't say horror movie or book, because it was much more kind of, you wondered who lived there as opposed to being fearful. It was this really quite big, very, very old, dark brown house, and it was shaded by trees, and there was a lot of kind of moss and ivy and all these plants growing on it, and it kind of looked like it hadn't had a ton of looking after on the outside, but that added to the real kind of mystery and intrigue about it. And it had these kind of windows that were those really old-fashioned windows, so not like double glazing or anything like that, and it just had this really wonderful appearance. And sometimes I would walk past it in the winter, it'd be really misty outside, and it would just have this atmosphere of like one of those really old British films where there's a mist and like you'd see in the distance, you know, a figure standing there. It was that type of a house. It really had this amazing atmosphere. And I kind of wish that somebody had found it who was like worked on a film or something like that and had just snapped it up and tried to use it for at least a film location or something, because it just looked perfect for that. Now, I don't know who lived there. I think possibly they may have been old, because there was no kind of maintenance done on the house for quite some time. And what is a little bit sad about the whole story is that the actual area in the end ended up being sold to developers. And so the place was bulldozed relatively recently, and they've sort of built some properties there. And so it's kind of a shame, because this house was so fantastical that I thought I have to create something that is a tribute to this house. Now, I do think I might actually paint the house itself as I recall it in my mind, because it was such a vivid image in my head. I can just picture certain things about it that made it so fascinating to me. But I wanted to create this idea that in this house, the owner is left, and it becomes sort of populated by little creatures, like squirrels start to live there and rabbits, and they elect a leader of this big kind of mansion. And it's this character called Lord, well, they don't actually call him Lord Fruity, but that's the name I've given him. And I just had this idea of these animals living in this really majestic kind of house, but it's all a little bit old and it's not really been looked after, but it's got beautiful things in it that have been kind of, that perhaps are like covered in dust, and you know, maybe old candelabra, and like a really old stove, and just really like interesting things like that. So that was the whole concept behind this painting, and it was just an idea that I've had for a long time, and I'm glad to finally translate it into a painting. And I do think I genuinely will at some point paint the actual house, perhaps on a hill or something, because it was just, funnily enough, it was actually on a quite a busy road, so it wasn't like hidden away or anything. I think a lot of people must have walked past it and seen it, but to me it was incredibly interesting. So there we go, that's the story, and I do hope that you enjoy this oil painting time lapse, and I will see you at the end of the video. I began my painting with a layer of burnt umber, as I normally do, and then I'm going over it, and this is the second layer. So the first layer has dried, the underpainting has dried, and now I'm going over the face with some yellow, red and burnt umber, black mixed together, and obviously some white in the lighter areas. And on the second layer, I like to kind of sketch out the rough tones of the animal or portrait or whatever I'm painting. And then I will let it dry and then come back for the next layer and then let that layer dry. And so it all depends on how much time I have to create different layers. Now, as I'm painting on linen, this is a linen panel, the drying time is not as fast as if I was painting on a different type of board. Sometimes a gesso board can dry very fast, or a wood panel can dry a little bit faster if you use a really fast kind of Galkid medium. But as I'm using linen, it's obviously going to be a little bit slower drying. So in this case, it took about a couple of days to dry. So I therefore didn't have as much time. However, this is just a surface that I really adore and it really suits my style. So I just have to put up with that, unfortunately. And I'm adding a kind of light blue. I think it's radiant turquoise actually for the highlights of this painting. But I go in a little bit later on and kind of go over these areas to make sure that they're even more highlighted. So it's like a layering process. Each time you emphasize the color and you come and you add a little bit more, and I also add some cool white as well, which is a great color for like really cool areas where the light hits. And in the composition, as this little rabbit has some authority, I wanted to make it very cute looking, but also have some impetus. So I painted the side profile of the rabbit because I just felt that looked a little bit more kind of authoritative. And with the grapes that it's holding, I like to incorporate some still life into portraiture and animal paintings. I just think it gives me great practice of painting these types of things, but also I just really like the reflective appearance of fruit and kind of glass, and all of that always looks so amazing, particularly with oil paint. With oil paint, you have the opportunity to glaze, which means you add like sort of very thin layers of paint with a little bit more medium. And so what's useful about that is you can create that really reflective, glistening surface. And so I always think it's nice to actually make use of oil paint in that way, because if you look at sort of many old classical paintings, they do use oil paint in that way. You'll get a lot of Dutch still lifes, for example, that really utilize that reflective quality of oil paints. And with the cape, what the rabbit is wearing, I went through a number of different changes. At first I wanted to paint it to be purple, but in the end I thought green was a better colour because the grapes had quite a lot of purple in them, so I didn't want it to be too uniform. I wanted it all to stand out and for the colours not to be too similar, otherwise it would all have blended into each other and the grapes would have blended into the costume of what the rabbit is wearing. So I do hope you enjoyed this painting. I certainly enjoyed painting it, and I really hope that you like this technique. Let me know if you have any questions about my painting, and I hope you have a wonderful week. I do hope you enjoyed this oil painting time lapse. Let me know if there's anywhere that you know that is kind of mysterious or has like a really interesting look about it. I think that as creative people, we find inspiration in the most unusual places. And so I'm still on the lookout for somewhere that holds that kind of mystery as this house did. You never know, sometimes it just crops up out of nowhere and you have to lodge it in your memory so you can access it for a future painting or a book or a, or a film or anything. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to do a slightly bigger painting next week, and I hope to finish it quicker. But I say these things and I don't know whether it will happen. I do think that I will start uploading on Sunday from now on. So fingers crossed it all goes well this week. And thank you so much again for your wonderful comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new. Also, one last thing, I do now have all the products that I use listed in the description, as well as my easel and everything like that. So if you're interested in getting any of the things that I use, and yeah. So all the links are below. I finally did it after what years of being on here. So yeah, thank you so much for watching everyone, and I'll see you soon. Take care, guys.